Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. And today, you may be expecting, hey, so this is the banners video, right? Where are the banners? Well, just for your information, your boy got a new setup, which means I also want to try a new kind of format for this kind of video series. So I wanted to try out some new format where I record the game instead of actually recording everything on Twitter, right? So now that we have the banners updated on this page, all we have to do is check it out real quick and see how it's gone. So I've actually tried to record it earlier, but I had a mistake. So yeah, that's why it's already clicked on, so as you can tell. So that's not important. So we got Shenhe and Ayaka rerun as well as the web banner. So we're going to discuss all of that as well. And yeah, this time, since it's going to be a different format, basically what I couldn't do before was discuss the characters in detail, but now this time I can discuss the characters more into detail. Before we get started, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button as well as like this video. If you guys like this kind of new format and you want to see more of this kind of content, then yeah, feel free to like this video. But without further ado, let's get into the banners. So we're going to start with the 4 stars, and then we're going to go into the 5 stars. So first off, we got ourselves Diona, Sucrose, and Mika, which oddly enough, I don't know why they released the banners, but not Mika's talents before, which is what they normally do with new characters. So I don't know what else to say for Mika. So let's just not waste some time here. Let's talk about Diona and Sucrose, and then, yeah, we'll just have a little brief talk about Mika. Alright, so up we got first is Diona. So Diona, as for those who has no idea, she is your classic cryo support, but with a twist. She actually has a lot of stuff in her kit. Like, for example, she has a shield. She also has AoE healing. And I'll just briefly go through these real quick. So for her elemental skill, basically, there's 2 ways to use it. You can either press it or hold it. Press it, it just fires off 2 icy paws. It just does like 2 extra cryo damage. But when you hold it, it actually fires off 5 icy paws. Not the biggest deal, but if you do manage to hit all of them, you do generate energy, which is kind of important for Diona if you want to consistently use this. And basically, when you press it, the base shield absorption is less, and also the duration is also less. But when you hold it, the shield base absorption is a lot higher, and also the cooldown is a lot longer. So do keep that in mind whenever you are using Diona in terms of your rotation. So for her elemental burst, it's very straightforward. Basically, AoE cryo damage, and it does damage protect for cryo, but it also heals. The cryo damage is pretty irrelevant. She doesn't do that much, so usually you use this for just mainly healing. And yeah, it scales with HP. Yeah, so what's cool about Diona is what I like about her, she does offer a lot, and already this is at base kit. She has a shield and healing, which is already a lot of defensive utility, right? Also, her first passive, whenever you're shielded by your icy paws, her elemental skill, their movement speed will be increased by 10%, as well as stamina consumption is decreased by 10%. Anyone with the shield, doesn't matter if it's down, any active character on field with this will get this buff, which is very good. And then nobody cares for the exploration passive, just perfect cooking. You get a 12% chance to obtain double the product, which is cool. For constellations, she's gets better at constellations wise. In my opinion, this is where most of her offensive utility comes in. So C1 basically regenerates 50 energy after you use your burst. That's already very good. That's really good for C1 already. Basically, you just cuts the cost from 80 to 65. So that's very good. Number 2, C2, we got this. Basically, like, your icy paws damage will be increased when its shield damage absorption is also increased by 50%. Additionally, whenever you hit the target, creates a shield nearby character. So basically, you get increase of icy paws damage, and who cares, and also increased shield damage absorption. This is the one that's the only important thing in my opinion. Everything else is kind of whatever. But you do also get you can create shield for other nearby characters with a 50% chance of icy paws shield damage absorption for 5 seconds. It's pretty nice. It's kind of like minor though, you don't really notice that. C3, 3 levels up to her burst. That's also nice, extra healing. Not the biggest deal though. C4, this is a joke. If you really want to do Diona DPS, which I've actually seen before, then go for it. But like, other than that, this is a complete waste of constellation. Don't even bother using this. C5, this is basically 3 levels up to her shield absorption, which is very good for her shield. And C6, this is where her power comes from in terms of an offensive buffer as well. So basically, how it works is kind of like similar condition as Bennett. Whenever you have like 50% or below HP, you get 30% more bonus healing. So that means more healing. But whenever you have 50% or higher HP, 200 extra elemental mastery. So overall, Diona, she is a very nice unit in terms of, you know, doing support for defensive utility and also offering offensive utility. Well, when you get the more offensive stuff when you get at C6. And yeah, she's very good. The only thing is she isn't used that much lately because, you know, for her character right now, there's just not too many team comps that's trending right now from meta that can really utilize Diona's kit fully. Until we start to get more characters that can, for example, get more melt reaction team comp base, or more like cryo related reactions that could really utilize elemental mastery, then for now she's a very good solid support that can offer you a lot of good defensive utility. But she also has this extra bonus if you do have her at C6. If you don't have her at C6, it's not the biggest deal in the world, because then again, you have all these extra bonuses that's already included in her base kit. So overall, she's very solid. Now, how to build her, she's very easy, free to play friendly as well. In my personal recommendation, I would go with Sacrificial Bow. This is my own preference, but other people have their options. But the reason I would go for this is if you would go with a shield more build type of build, you can basically resummon her shield over and over, right? Because of how Sacrificial Bow's passive works. And also, you can also get extra energy orbs. So she becomes a good cryo battery as well. But if not, you can also use Favonius. This is a good option for her if you're gonna want to proc her burst more consistently. Then yeah, Favonius is also a decent weapon. Those are the 2 weapons I would recommend. Favonius is free to play. You do get this for free once you finish the first Archon quest in Mondstadt. So yeah, that's probably the only thing I would recommend personally for Diona. As for talents, probably I would just upgrade skill first and then burst. Or if you're gonna go fully on healing, then burst first and skill. You can ignore the normal attacks. They are completely negligible. Artifacts for Diona, in my opinion, I would just go for 4-piece noblesse. But there are other options. You can go for extra healing, or if you're gonna go for extra healing, just give her like 2-piece of any of the healing set. None of the healing sets as of right now is fully good. I'm talking about like 4-piece set wise, but everything else you can just go like 2-piece healing and then 2-piece of whatever other substat. You can, if you want to maximize your shield more, you can also go like 2-piece of Emblem Sever Fate, which is energy recharge, and then 2-piece of HP from Tenacity Millith. That's personally one of my recommendations for that build. Alright, so Diona overall, very nice character. Up next, we got Sucrose. Sucrose, she is a very good character. She is still arguably one of the best 4-stars in the game. Like, she's just that good. So let's talk about her talents real quick. So normal attacks, you really rarely use this, but what is great about it is she is a catalyst, which means all of her attacks are all animal damage, so you can constantly be swirling every single time if you have like some sort of off-field damage dealer. So for her skill, it's very straightforward. She uses AoE animal damage and also crowd controls, which means it gathers anything that's within her radius. So it's very cool. And her burst is basically the longer version of it. It does damage per tick of animal, and it's a stronger crowd control. Also, there's this mechanic where you have elemental absorption, which basically means when you absorb one of the main 4 elements, you keep on reapplying the element as well as enhancing more of that type's damage. You're gonna maybe looking at this and be like, huh, why are the talent levels not upgraded at all? Because her talent levels are based on her damage multiplier scaled by her attack. As you can see, there's a reason why I never upgraded these. So if you go to, actually, we're gonna start with the passive first. So Sucrose, whenever she triggers Sword reaction, all characters in the party except for herself will get 50 elemental mastery. So basically what that means is whenever you swirl, you get 50 extra elemental mastery, excluding herself. And the reason why I haven't bothered upgrading these at all is because of this passive right here. So whenever you use your skill or burst and it hits an opponent, it increases all party members' elemental mastery by equal to 20% of Sucrose elemental mastery. So this is extremely important for Sucrose because this turns her from, you know, an animal specialist then to now a elemental mastery support / DPS. So what that means is you want to just stack up all of her stats with as much elemental mastery as you possibly can to fully maximize this passive right here. This becomes not only increase to her DPS but also increasing your overall team's DPS. This is why she is very, very good and why you should really utilize her. Also, she has one of the best explorative passives in the game. 10% chance to obtain double the product of character and weapon essential materials. Those are really important. Yeah, that's why I never upgraded these, because these are more for like if you want to do more animal personal damage, which still, even if you have like good crit stats on Sucrose, in my opinion, I still think triple on mastery build is way stronger than personal animal damage. Well, unless you want to see the bigger animal damage numbers, then you can do that. For constellations, I'll just briefly go through these. C1 gives an extra charge, which is probably one of my favorites constellations for her. It's just, you know, extra energy plus extra CC. That's always very good. C2, extra duration for her elemental burst. That's always nice. 3 levels up to her elemental skill, which is very good. Actually, not really. It's really irrelevant. So C4, cooldown decrease by 1 to 7 seconds for every normal charge attack hits scored on opponents. This is kind of like a little subtle, but if you can manage to maximize this, it's kind of nice though, if you can manage to do this. And then C5 and C3 kind of irrelevant. C6, basically this is where she becomes an insane support. This is where she just excels. Basically, this is like a mini Coswell buff, where as soon as you use your elemental burst and you infuse with her elemental absorption, I'll explain what this is in a bit. Basically, she increased 20% elemental damage bonus for the corresponding absorbing element. So let's say if you absorb electro, for example, then your party gets 20% electro damage bonus, which is very good. Yeah, overall, very simple. She's basically your elemental mastery specialist, and she is still very good to this day. Now for her gear, in my personal opinion, I personally like Sacrificial Frags because, you know, it has one of the highest elemental mastery substats. Also, the passive is insane. On Sucrose, you basically get a chance to regenerate an extra elemental skill, which is very good. But there's other options too, like if you got this recent Wandering Even Star weapon, this is a limited gacha 4-star weapon series though, but if you manage to have it, this is also a decent option. Or anything to do with elemental mastery, that works as well. Or there is, as I've seen as well, you can use Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer. Basically, if you use this, I've seen this where she becomes more of the animal battery, and she uses her elemental skill, and then she becomes more of an animal battery for certain characters like Zhao or Wander. And yeah, this is more of a attack buffing build. If you're gonna go for this, then this is fine. But honestly, if you want to maximize more of her elemental mastery aspect of her kit, then I would just stick with any book that has elemental mastery on there. Mapamare and Magic Guide is currently the only free-to-play, I think, elemental mastery catalyst I can think of. So, or at least the ones that, to me, are like decently very good at. Mapamare is more DPS oriented. This is just more of a stat stick. If you are on a budget, it's a 3-star weapon. You can get this at R5 easily because these are obtainable pretty much everywhere. So yeah. For Sucrose, Sucrose only has one artifact set only. You're gonna go for 4-piece Verdescent, even if you're doing animal damage build. This set will be her only set that you will use. That's the only downside to her, because you kind of do want this set. This will enhance not only her damage, but your teammates' damage as well. So this set overall is just insane. And like what I said before, triple elemental mastery to maximize her passive. So overall, Diona and Sucrose, very insane. Another tip I want to mention is that for characters that does transforming reaction, which means like this scales with only level and elemental mastery, especially with someone like Sucrose, if you want to like maximize her build, you want to get her to max out her level to 90. You also want to get as much elemental mastery as much as possible, and that's what mainly matters. You'll notice like a significant increase in her DPS. So yeah, that's my tip for that. Alright, so that's my take on Diona and Sucrose. As you can see, these two are very good 4 stars. So up next we got Mika, which we are still not sure of. In fact, I don't even know like what exactly he does. I just know briefly based on like the information from what they announced in the live stream. And basically, if I remember correctly, Mika buffs like attack speed and physical damage, and also is a healer. What I took from this, he's more of a offensive version of Diona. So someone that kind of clicks to me that needs normal attack speed, that's also buffs physical damage, is Eula. Eula, basically, her whole point is you want to like stack up her, whenever you use her elemental burst, you want to stack up by using as much attacks as possible, which normal attack speed is going to be really significant for someone like Eula. Depends like how much attack speed he gives, but if it's like, you know, a decent amount, then that's going to be very nice for someone like Eula. At least that's what I am thinking as what they were intending for design-wise. I'm not sure like what else he does, because again, as of currently recording right now, his talents hasn't been released, so it's really hard to determine whether he's going to be good or not. So if you guys want to know more information on Mika, just wait for my video on once they release the talents and my initial reaction and breakdown as well, or you could just wait for once he comes out in the first release, and then you can just watch other content creators, you know, in more of an in-depth guide, which I would recommend if you guys want to know more into detail on how Mika works. Because like what I mean by into detail, I mean like in terms of like how frequent he applies the buffs, how much he heals, how much normal attack speed he buffs, etc. That's my take for the 4-star characters. Overall, pretty nice characters. And now on to the 5 stars. So we'll start with Shenhe, and then we'll go to Ayaka after. Alright, so luckily I have both Ayaka and Shenhe on this account, so we can just talk about it here. So basically how she works is you have her elemental skill and burst. These are the only two that matters. Her normal attacks you can ignore unless you're going to make her your main cryo DPS, which is another build that you can try out, but we're not going to talk about that today. But for now, we're going to talk about what she really does exactly. So to short it all, she is a cryo damage buffer, which means she enhances cryo damage. Basically how her elemental skill works is basically what it's called is she gives you an icy quill effect that deals cryo damage. There's 2 ways to use it. You have a press and hold. I will go into more detail because one of the passive does actually make these two a bit more significant than it sounds. But basically, Icy Quill deals cryo damage and also increases your normal charge and plunging attacks, elemental skill, and elemental burst damage. Anything that does cryo damage will be increased from her Icy Quill. And how it works into advance is whenever you do 1 instance of cryo damage to your enemy, that counts as a trigger hit. So there's actually a trigger limitation. So as you can see here, it's called the trigger quota. There's a certain amount of times you can receive this buff. So what I mean by that is whenever you press your elemental skill, you only get 5 trigger quotas, which means you only get 5 enhanced cryo damage. And for the hold, it's 7, so +2 basically. And to go into detail more of this, if you hit many instance targets at once, that will count all individually as however many times you hit them. So for example, if you have 5 opponents and you have an AoE cryo ability that hits all 5 of them, that will count as 5 trigger quotas, which means that you use up all of your Icy Quill effects. So yeah, that's to keep in mind. So like someone like Ganyu, for example, who has an AoE charge attack, who can pretty much just AoE everything, she'll pretty much like almost once or twice you can utilize this buff. Also, these all independently apply for each party member. So do not forget whenever you are using Shenhe's buff, you can keep switching to other cryo members, which is why that whenever you use Shenhe, most of the times mono cryo comps tends to be very insane because you can utilize this Icy Quill effect, which means every time you rotate, all party members have their own individual trigger quotas. But the way the trigger quota works is by each enemy you hit, that will count as 1. So that's about it. So here is her talent damage multipliers. For the press, you get this, and then for the hold, you get that. It's decent. For the damage bonus, it basically scales 82% of her attack. This is why you want to stack up attack on her, because all this Icy Quill is all scaled based on Shenhe's current attack, which means you want to stack up as much attack as you possibly can, so you can buff a lot more damage bonus to your other characters as well. And here's the duration. It's 5-second difference, and yeah, there you go. For the elemental burst, it's very straightforward. She launches AoE cryo damage. It does cryo damage per tick. And it also decreases cryo resistance and physical resistance. Resistance can decrease even more whenever you upgrade the talent. So as you can see, resistance decrease can upgrade, which is why I upgraded mine to level 8. Also, the damage-wise, you can also upgrade as well, but as you can see, there's not that much of a difference. The only important thing about this is the resistance decrease for both cryo and physical. So that means you can be utilized for, obviously, cryo teams and can be viable for physical teams as well. So for her first passive, we have whenever an active character is on field with her burst, they gain 50% cryo damage bonus, which is another buff you get from this. So that's awesome. And then for her second passive, whenever she uses her elemental skill, there are 2 different effects you get for whenever you use her elemental skill. Remember how there's 2 ways of using press and hold, right? So whenever you press, you gain elemental skill and elemental burst damage increased by 50%. Whereas when you hold, you get normal charge and plunging attack damage increased by 50%. So you actually want to strategize on what you want to use first. Like in certain situations, if you really need to get this again, just press it and then you just use you utilize more of your cryo character's elemental skill or elemental burst. But if you have more time to deal more damage, then I would recommend to hold Shenhe's elemental skill. Then your cryo DPS can do more of their normal and charge attack damage. That's just increase even more damage. However, if you kind of do mess up this pattern, it will take a bit of practice. But if you do mess up this pattern a bit, it's not the biggest deal in the world because you still have this extra damage bonus you gain regardless. So this is just more damage bonus, but for more of like a certain field of your kit. So yeah, just that's about it. For talent wise, just 25% more. Who cares? All right, so constellation wise, I will go briefly into these as well because I personally don't like to recommend to summon for constellations for 5 stars, but for those who are whales and are watching this video, I'll just briefly go through these real quick. So C1 is basically 1 extra charge for her elemental skill, which is nice because you get more uptime with the trigger quotas, right? Number 2 is basically cryo crit damage is increased by 50% whenever you use her elemental burst. And yeah, it's nice. Whoever basically is on field gets also 50% crit cryo damage. Only 15% though, so it's not that big of a deal. 3 levels up to her skill, that's very good. For C4, basically the Icy Quill applied, Shenhe will also gain a damage bonus for whenever you use her skill. She will consume all stacks of Skyfrost Mantra, which is basically like extra damage to her elemental burst. It's only each stack is by 5%. Max can go up to 50, which means that it can be up to 250% extra damage, which is very good. That means she can actually decently do a decent amount of damage whenever she uses her burst. But this is more like if you want to do a cryo DPS build on Shenhe, which most of the times you don't really need to unless you are at this level. Then you can try out this build. C5 extra level to her burst, which is good for C4. And in C6, this is where it is kind of interesting because basically, remember how I mentioned about the trigger quota? It will become completely irrelevant when you use it will become completely irrelevant when you do normal and charge attack damage. So basically what that means is as soon as you use your elemental skill, then you will have none of this. Basically you don't have to worry about it. You'll pretty much have endless icy quill buff until 15 seconds is gone. So that's pretty crazy if you think about it, especially on a character like certain characters that could really utilize it, like Ayaka or Ganyu. These two would be ridiculously just doing enhanced cryo damage the entire time for 15 seconds. So that constellation is pretty crazy, but then again, in my opinion, not necessarily needed. It's a little too unnecessary anyway, because the game is already kind of beatable, and Shenhe already by herself can enhance enough cryo DPS in the first place. So constellations overall not necessary at all, but C6 is definitely the best one, and yeah, pretty nice. Now for Shenhe's gear, I will go for personally Favonius Lance, like all polearm supports. But if you do have her weapon, that's also going to be her best in slot, obviously. But anything in my personal recommendation that has attack for the substat or energy recharge, then I would use that as well. So like something like this, Lithic Spear as well. But this is more of a gotcha weapon series. For artifacts, in my personal recommendation, I will go for 4-piece Noblesse, but other people have other preferences. Like they like to use like 2-piece attack percent, which, you know, benefits the Icy Quills scaling even higher. But this also does, if I guess people tend to forget, this also gives 20% extra attack to everyone, plus you know, elemental burst increase. So yeah, but you know, there's other options as well. I mean, you can mix it up a bit. There's 2-piece, like again, what I mentioned before, 2-piece attack percent, right? You can just stack up 2 different kinds of stuff with attack percent. You can also do like 2-piece attack percent of any of these, and 2-piece, I don't know, you could do anything, like 2-piece emblem for the extra energy recharge. For substats, for main stats, I will go triple attack, but if you are running a attack polearm, like completely attack polearm, and you are running low on ER, then I would recommend ER Sands. So yeah, and if you're running Favonius, then try to maintain good crit ratio, so try to have like crit. So that is my advice for Shenhe. So overall, she is decently free-to-play friendly, and I would only get her if you are willing to invest to higher cryo damage for whatever cryo DPS you have. Yeah, overall, Shenhe is very nice if you want to go into that level of discovering how much potential you have for cryo damage. So yeah, pretty nice. Another cool thing is you kind of can technically turn anyone to cryo DPS. What I mean by that is if you have both Shenhe and Chongyun, he can use his elemental skill to infuse any normal attacks to cryo damage, which means you can actually buff anyone's cryo damage. And the reason why I mentioned earlier that you can make Shenhe a cryo damage dealer is because of Chongyun's elemental skill. Infuse that to normal attacks to Shenhe, and then you can do whatever you want with from there. So that's also an option. But yeah, then again, it's your choice on what you want to do. All right, so on to the best girl.
Kamisato Ayaka, present. Delighted to make your acquaintance.
Alright, so let's start off with her kit real quick. So her normal is basically the standard, but when you have this, which is basically like Mona's dash, for those who are familiar, you can just go underground and then just keep dashing, and then whenever you pop up and hit an enemy, it applies your corresponding elements. So for Mona, it's Hydro, but for Ayaka, it's Cryo. Keep this in mind whenever I will explain later, because this is actually a lot more important than you think. So basically, this effect where whenever you dash and you come up, it infuses her normal attacks to cryo. So basically, you will always have 100% cryo uptime. So essentially, she's kind of like similar to a cryo catalyst, but that's the whole idea of her dash. So as you can see, damage multiplier is pretty nice. For elemental skill, very straightforward. AoE cryo damage whenever she uses it, and it just summons and does AoE cryo damage. Pretty nice. For elemental burst, this is where her kit is mostly focused on. So this is where it becomes insane. So what she does is she summons a giant snowstorm, and it'll do 20 ticks of cryo damage. 19 will be this cutting damage, and then 20th will be this extra final hardest hitting blooming damage. And it's a lot. And this is a big deal. The reason why this is a big deal is because if you manage to hit all 20 hits, mathematically, at level 10, this is over 4,000 damage multiplier, which is ridiculously high. And that's within 5 seconds as well. So that's like a lot of DPS. So this is 100% one of the best burst abilities I've ever seen in the game. Definitely 80 energy worthy, and yeah, it's very strong. So in terms of like time priorities, I would definitely focus on this the most. The other two, I would probably, like, if you're on a budget, maybe go up to like level 6 to 7. For these two, you can go either or, whichever you prefer the most. Probably like I would go with normal attack, then elemental skill last. And for what I was mentioning with the Shenhe, we're gonna go into that real quick. Oh, first let me go into this. So after you use your skill, this will apply to this. After you use your skill, you'll increase 30% of Ayaka's normal and charge attack damage. So this is a nice little increase to her overall, you know, on-field DPS. And then whenever you... And now for the second passive, where basically... Remember what I said about this dash, right? This dash is really important because you basically, whenever you hit an enemy with their dash, you restore 10 stamina, which is actually kind of nice. A lot of people tend to ignore that. And then also gain 18% crowd damage bonus for 10 seconds, which is ridiculous. So that's why you want to utilize her dash. And, you know, I guess for the people who, you know, might not be comfortable with that kind of dash, then yeah, you might have to learn how to play this. And if not, maybe she's not the type of character for you. But overall, you're definitely going to be dashing a lot with her, so you can gain this 80% crowd damage bonus a ton, and also restore 10 stamina. So that's a very insane passive. And she also has a 10% chance to double the product of weapon essential materials, so that's pretty nice. So for constellations, in my opinion, she's C0 friendly. Like, she's already powerful at base. You've already seen her base multipliers, so you don't really need to increase. But let's go over her constellations regardless. So C1, this is super like negligible. Like, nobody will be able to tell the difference. Just basically cooldown time will be cut whenever you use her normal attacks or charge attacks for crowd damage. This is only for elemental skill though. Maybe if this was for elemental burst, I would say like it would be a little bit better, but only for elemental skill. So it's who cares? Now for C2, this is actually one of my favorites because I don't know, it just visually changes a little bit of Ayaka's playstyle. But basically, her elemental burst for C2 will gain 2 additional ones, but it's a little bit smaller. And it also deals 20% of the original storm damage. So not only that she has more AoE coverage, she also does extra DPS, which is very good. You know, that's already great for more, again, coverage for AoE, more crowd. It's just a lot easier for crowd control, and again, more DPS, more crowd application. So this is already like a pretty good constellation. C3, this 3 levels up to her burst, pretty nice. C4, this is, in my opinion, her best constellation. It is just a huge spike in damage. It's just ridiculous. After you use your burst, you decrease your opponent's defense by 30%. So this basically, what happens is it actually turns Ayaka into another role where she can play in team building. So you can actually make her in certain team comps more of a, you know, cryo sub DPS. So basically you use her burst, you decrease defense, and then while the burst is still going for 5 seconds, you can also have, you know, you can either do melt reactions, or you can do more cryo damage, or you could do like literally anything you want. Because the defense, 30% defense decrease is a general universal debuff. So do manage to take advantage of this if you have C4. You can stack up as much damage as you possibly can, especially when you're melting as well. You can actually, she becomes more of an insane melt sub DPS because of this constellation here. So yeah, overall, ridiculous constellation. Yeah, that's all I can say. 3 levels up to her skill, who cares? And C6, this constellation is more of a situational constellation. Every 10 seconds, her charge attack damage will be doing extra, pretty much nearly 300% damage, which is very nice. However, if you just have this by itself, then it's okay. But if you do have this with Shenhe, this constellation does become pretty ridiculous. And if you have this as well, both C6, this is where Ayaka literally has like another giant ass nuke every 10 seconds. So if you really want that, then it's required to have C6 for both of these two. Or at least have Shenhe, but get her to C6. But yeah, as you can see, it's at C6. Personally, it's not worth it at all. I mean, she already does so much damage, and plus you already have this. If you're gonna stop at a certain point, I would just stop here. But if you're a whale that wants to fully invest in Ayaka, which I respect, then yeah, this is what her C6 does. So onto her gear. So her gear is actually quite free-to-play friendly. Basically, she has a lot of weapon options. Anything to do with offensive stats, so like crit, would work. But for free-to-plays, in my personal recommendation, I would go with the Amanoma Kakeuchi, which, don't worry, this is a craftable weapon for Inazuma. And basically, what it does is it's an attack stat stick, which is very good for Ayaka because she has high base attack, which means higher scaling for more attack, right? And How this works is every time you use your elemental skill, you gain a seed, and then you can get up to 3 seeds. And after you use your burst, you'll gain back whatever refinement you have. So for mine is refinement 5, I get 12 back. But if I have 3 stacks of seeds, I'll get 36 energy back, which is a lot of energy. So that's why this weapon is insane, because this makes Ayaka very self-sufficient in terms of energy recharge. Also, this frees up energy recharge for your artifact stats, and you can build more offensive stats. So this is overall a very, very good weapon for Ayaka, which I would recommend 100% to invest to, as well as even refining it as well. You get more value out of this. But as is her weapon, just anything offensive stat-wise. And yeah, that's it. For the artifacts, it's very straightforward. I would personally go for Peace Blizzard. This is where she, gets a lot of insane value for crit rate, which means you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is just, freeze your opponents, and you just pretty much be doing a ton of cryo damage. But there's also like melt builds too, which if you want to try that out, you can. But I'm not gonna talk about too much in this video. It's just a kind of a different build where you can just like go a 2-piece of this and a 2-piece of anything else, like noblesse or 2-piece attack, whatever. But that's a different build. But for this, mainly just attack, cryo, and crit damage. Or if you don't have enough attack, I would personally recommend over 2,000. Then at least have like, then you can also go for an attack percent circlet with crit damage and crit rate subsets on there as well. But yeah, overall, she's insane. I mean, look at her. She's literally the cutest character in the game. So get her. So overall, Shenhe and Ayaka, very solid characters. Now let's move on to the weapon batters. So we got ourselves. Okay, we got ourselves some interesting selection here. And for the 5 stars, it's obviously the signature weapons for both of these 2 characters. So we'll talk about the other weapons in a sec. So we got Belle, which, who cares? The Wine and Song. Wine and Song is alright. Basically, it just increase attack percent whenever you do a dash, which it's nice, but other than that, like, there's other way stronger catalyst options. So what's honestly the problem with this weapon is because of its weapon type. The catalyst weapons is a pretty competitive weapon types, so there's a lot more offensive, stronger weapon options. If you only have this, then Wine and Song is a decent pickup, but if you have like other stronger weapons, like with Sith or sacrificial fragments, etc., then those tends to be a bit more selected than Wine Song. But hey, if you have it and that's the only 4-star you have, then this is a decent weapon you can use. These other 3, I think I already briefly talked about them. I don't really need to talk about them. I mean, Sacrificial Sword, Favonius Warble, and Favonius Lance, they're all like insane. Especially with refinements, you get even more energy regeneration, which is even more insane. Now let's talk about what's more important, which is the 5-star weapons. We got the Mistsplitter, Reforged, and Calamity Queller. So we'll talk about Mistsplitter first, since I have this weapon. I have to pull this up on the webpage. Okay, so Mistsplitter, here's the stats at 90, base attack at 674, which is currently the highest for sword, I believe, which is already really good. And crit damage is, 44.1%. It is low, but it's still crit damage at the end of the day, which is very good. Passive is ridiculous as well. You'll see in a sec. Gains a 12% elemental damage bonus for all elements, which is very good. And for the buffs you receive whenever you use your swords, there's individual stacks, as you can see, 1, 2, and 3. The buffs can go up to 28% of elemental damage bonus of your character's type. So what this means is if you do one of these conditions, you can get up to 8% or 16%. Or 28%. So for example, if I have 2 stacks, I only get 16%. But if I have 3 stacks, I get 28%. These do not add up. Just keep that in mind. And for the conditions, we have the normal attack, damage deals, elemental skill, or elemental damage, sorry. And this attack lasts up to 5 seconds. So basically, if you have infusion with your normal attacks, then this will be pretty good. So someone like Ayaka, Kaching, Alhaitham, I think Ayato as well should be able to get this. And then for the second condition, we got casting our elemental burst. That's basically that's it. And for the second condition, just casting your elemental burst, and that's really it. And then for the third one, this tends to be a bit tricky to use. Basically, you need to have 0 energy, and then stack will disappear when your energy is full. So, yeah, pretty nice. Basically, use this whenever you have 0 energy. But sometimes in certain rotation, people recommend like, oh, you want to like use your skill before, then burst. But whenever you use this sword specifically, you want to use your burst first, then your skill after, because if you get some energy while casting her burst, you're gonna lose out on this stack. So that's my that's overall the sword, how it works. Basically, if you do manage to get all 3 stacks, you get 28% elemental damage bonus plus 12, which give you 40% elemental damage bonus of your type, plus crit damage, plus the high base attack. So overall, this weapon is ridiculous. It has like a crazy amount of stats on here. It's insane. That's all I can tell you. Like easily top 3 best 5-star swords in the game. Like, this is like, it's arguably even the best sword right now. So, yeah, this is insane. It's still a ridiculous weapon. Alright, so I just pulled out Calamity Queller. This is Shenhe's signature weapon. So here are the stats. So we got ourselves, and the base attack is 741, which is really high. That's like the highest in the game, I think. And for the substat, it's 60% attack, which is kind of funny. But this is what matters. This is just, as you can already tell from where this is going, this is going to be a powerful attack stat stick. For the passive, basically, what happens is you gain 12% elemental damage bonus for all, which is pretty cool. And you obtain this buff for 20 seconds after using elemental skill, causing an attack to increase 3.2% per second. And you can go up to 6 stacks. So, around like 18 seconds, you'll be able to get like all this maxed out. And basically, at max stacks, you get up to 18% attack. But here's the thing: whenever your character is off field, this is doubled, which means if someone is holding this and is off field, that person will get 36% attack. So this, as of right now, only this passive I believe works really well for Shenhe, but for everyone else that can use this, they can't really utilize this, unfortunately. So instead, they'll just gain like extra 18% attack. So overall, this is a very nice attack stat stick, and you know, it's a very good weapon for someone like, obviously this is the best slot for Shenhe, just extra attack. However, you know, if you're gonna end up using this for like other characters, it's just mainly going to be an attack stat 6. So it's nice, but there's other polearm options that you can use that can benefit a bit more. However, this provides so much attack, so you know, I mean, you can't always go wrong with attack. So that's the great thing about it. All right, so my overall take for the weapon banners: only summon if you have both Ayaka and Shenhe. Because in my opinion, I don't think, even though Mistsplitter is like arguably the best 5-star weapon in the game, it's just not personally that worth it. Although the 4-star weapons are nice too, except for this one mainly. But in my personal opinion, I would only summon if you have someone like Ayaka. And if you have Shenhe as well, then this becomes a bit more valuable, and this is more of your choice on if you want to summon. And if you also don't have much refinements, you can also have a chance of getting these as well. But personally, I would only summon if you have both of these two. Now, for the character banners, this is very nice for those who are new to the game, which is kind of, you know, interesting. For Mika's case, it's kind of weird because, surprisingly, I would probably rerun Eula instead, and then have Mika and Eula run together if that's what's, you know, he's designed for. But maybe this is implying that Mika can, you know, not only buff physical, but he can offer a bit more in terms of buffing. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that Diona and Sucrose is very good, and getting their constellations makes them even better. And Mika, we're not sure yet, so that's that. But both of these characters are pretty strong in their case. Shenhe, in short, she's a niche cryo damage enhancer, and she's very powerful at it. And Ayaka, in my opinion, is the strongest cryo damage dealer in the game. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So banners overall pretty solid, and I would only summon if you guys are interested in, you know, the cryo department. Other than that, that is all I got for today. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, as well as like this video for more Genshin content. And let me down below in the comments if you guys enjoyed this new type of format for a video. And I know it's a little long, but you know, you guys can all skip ahead. And more for I just want to explain more on the characters for newer players, because I still get like newer player viewers, so that's why I go into more depth for that. Other than that, that's all I got. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, stay epic and peace out.